So welcome to the Fire of Connection. My name is Arion and I will be hosting this adventure into the miracle of human connection. And so let me start by just checking that you want richer, deeper connection with people in your life. Yeah, just check that you're in the right place. And this is a universe, if you don't know, this is sort of a universal yes on Zoom. This is I hear you, this is I agree with you. This is sort of like a way of firing up the Zoom screen with connection without needing to all unmute and all the awkwardness that comes from that. So just checking that you want more connection with the people in your life. Yep, great. Great. Yes, good. We're in the right place. Awesome. So today is devoted to one single thing, which is that connection, how to increase the connection with the people in your life, the people that you're really intimately close to, so partners, family, children, but also friends, community, and even workmates, customers, everything. What we're going to learn today will hopefully give you a doorway to richer connection across the board. So where do I start? Well, a lot of you won't know me, so I'm going to share a bit of my story and share how it's led me to create today's session, and also led me to just create an incredible love for human relationships. Amrita asked me to run a session on human connection, and I was like, just I'm doing business these days. I'm do I still have it in me to do something on human connection? Because I used to run a lot of work around human connection, but these days I'm mainly a business coach. That's the hat I wear. So actually preparing for this workshop has taken me into a really rich love of humans that I almost forgot about because I've loved their businesses now. And so thank you for asking me to do this, Amrita. It's beautiful to just return to, what a deep passion of mine is, which is connecting. So I think I'll start just with the most heartbreaking story of my life, and also the deepest sort of connection and doorway to connection in my life. So I was teaching personal development work for years, passionate about human connection, passionate about humans finding their purpose, but also I didn't realize, but quite sort of arrogant in my, I've worked out life, I know what I'm doing. And we'd just given birth, me and my wife had just given birth to a little boy. He was just over 1. And she started to be unwell, and quite quickly we got the diagnosis that she had terminal cancer. My boy was 1.5 by that time, and as you can imagine, it was devastating. Yeah, she was given 6 to 12 months to live, and everything that we knew about was turned on its head. As those of you who've ever faced that or know people who do, everything changes in an instant. And there was, all of this grief and all of this shock, and then all of these medical decisions and a whole, journey to go on there. And so I quit my work and committed fully to be there for her and be there to raise my boy. And we went on the journey of, all sorts of treatment, from wacky Russian sap from a tree to chemo to all sorts of different things. She was a very dynamic woman who really wanted to explore every option for her healing. And so we went on a healing journey, and I became her carer, her chef. She went on a raw diet, and so I became a raw chef. I was cooking sometimes like 4 different meals each mealtime, for one for my son, one for me, one for her, one for, a visiting person. And so I became a superhero, trying to care for her and hold her in her grief of trying to heal, as well as facing the grief and the shock. But what happened was I really became a robot. It took me a while to realize that, but I was so ridden with grief and shock, but I just, as carers often do, I just put myself aside and just said, I'll just take care of you. I don't have needs, because obviously the intensity of what she was facing was so much more than what I was facing. So, I didn't focus on myself. And this went by about 6 months, driving her to appointments, doing all sorts of medical support, raising my son. I was pretty involved already, but it was another whole step up of being involved with him and trying to help him understand why he wasn't getting as much time with his mum. And it got to a point after about 6 or 7 months where I was really a shell of a man. I was doing all the motions. People were saying, "Arion, you're so amazing. You're helping them. You're being an incredible dad, incredible support." And I was externally, I was doing all the right things, but internally I'd shriveled up. I couldn't really connect with her. I couldn't hold her in her grief. I couldn't really meet what was going on for her. Even my son, I was, going through the motions, but I was shell inside. I was dead. And I remember, like, I would close the pantry door and just sit on the floor for a few minutes and take a moment away from life to breathe, to try and, I was really not coping, but not telling anybody. And feeling guilty for that, incredibly guilty, because with what she's facing, how can I be feeling guilty and angry at life? And then there was one night, been watching NCIS, which I developed. I hadn't watched television for 10 years before that, but I developed a television habit to try and give myself some respite from the pain of life. And that night they both had whooping cough, and I was going from my boys' room to her room back and forward, and then watching bits of NCIS when they were quiet. And finally, the house had gone quiet and NCIS finished. And this was back when you couldn't just click the next episode. It was like on a television, and there was nothing else on. And I turned the television off, and I just got hit with this well of grief. And I literally remember sliding off the couch onto the floor and just began to sob. And it's like finally I broke, and I was sobbing and sobbing, and just the main thing that was coming through was feeling like an absolute failure, feeling like I wasn't able to take care of my wife like I wanted to. I didn't know how to try and help my boy as good. I just really felt like I was failing. I had this version of who I was meant to be as husband, father, spiritual, conscious man, and I was failing at all my things. I was dead inside and just in total survival mode. And I remember collapsing on the floor and just sobbing, and this incredible sense of failure, like when you know what it's like when you love people and you want the best for them, but you're not able to be the person you want to be. It's excruciating. And then that was piled on top of this guilt because I wasn't supposed to be that way. I wasn't the one who was dying. And so I just sobbed, and I have no idea actually how long it was, but maybe half an hour, just lay on the floor breathing, crying again, just feeling like a broken man, feeling like I'd failed. And then this thing happened. I still don't have words for it to this day, where I just felt this presence of love. Yeah. And I feel like this love, I don't know, rose from the floor, or I don't know where it came from, inside me, outside of me. But this love just feels like it, somewhere in the breaking, somewhere in that collapse on the floor, where I'd stopped trying to control everything, and I'd given up. Basically, I'd failed inside my little. It's like my personality broke, my identity just went crack, and I was lying there like as an utter failure. And then this love rose, and it was like warm arms of love come. It was like a voice was there saying, "I love you," not like Deepak Chopra in a voice that I could hear, but just there was a presence, the best way to describe it, of love saying, "I love you and I've got you." And it was excruciating to let that love in, because I felt like I didn't deserve it. And I almost literally remember arguing with it, like, "I don't deserve this love. Can't you see I'm not caring for her?" I felt incredibly selfish. And this love just kept holding me. And if you ever tried to argue with unconditional love, it's not an easy argument to win, because it just keeps going, "I hear you, I love you." And so that happened for hours. And at the end, I finally fell asleep with this I felt something new inside me. And then the days after that, it began to happen more and more in the evenings first, and then through the day, where I felt this sense of love and this sense of faith and this sense of everything was going to be okay. I'd read about this in books, this sense of, but it was so deeper than that. It wasn't something I had to strive for. It wasn't a thought. It wasn't even emotion. It was just a presence of love inside me that was breathtaking to me, and held me and comforted me and nurtured me in that time. But then for me, the real miracle happened, where I started to notice that it was flowing through me. It was starting to speak through me to my boy. It was able to love my wife in a way I, as the little carer, busybody, hadn't been able to do. I'd be able to sit there and hold her in my arms while she grieved, and I before that, I couldn't hold that depth of space. I was too in functional survival mode. But now I was able to hold her as she grieved, and this space opened between us of incredible love right in the face of grief. And she began to share more and more of her journey, and then she found a love as well, what she called the love that cannot die. And she became like a radiant awakened being in many ways. It was an incredible experience. Right in her grief, she just became so present and so loving, and she began to sing songs, and all of those who got to spend time with her in those last days were blown away by whoever she'd become. And so we spent the last months grieving, breaking, and opening into a love beyond anything I'd ever known in myself, and then with her. And yeah, I'd read about love, I'd done my meditation, I had some conscious idea of it, but this was different than any of that. It was so all pervasive, and it didn't care whether it was good or bad or right or wrong. It was just feeling it, and each moment became so incredibly precious. As those of you who spent time with someone near the end know, like, each moment becomes so precious. And then, what's 13 years ago now, just the anniversary just the other day, I woke up and I was sleeping next to her bed, and I woke up in the 5 o'clock in the morning and just had the urge. We had a nurse there who was caring, which meant it could be at home, which was really beautiful. And I just had this urge, and I went and sat behind her, and she was in a coma by this point. It was right near the end. We'd had a few days of just friends visiting and saying goodbye. And I took her in my arms, and I put her body against mine and just lay there with her for an hour, and the sunlight was just starting to come through the trees. And I heard kookaburras laughing, the first call of kookaburras in the morning, laughing. And then literally straight after that, she took her last breath and passed in my arms. And the intensity of love in that moment is impossible to describe unless you know it, you've experienced it. And I hope you guys have, because I was in the worst thing that could ever happen to me. I would never wish it on anyone, never wish it on her having to let go of being a mum, never wish it on my boy having to grow up without his mum, never wish it on me as a husband to not have his beloved wife and have to raise his boy by himself. And yet the intensity of love was so strong, so through me, that I remember it to this day. And I remember giving my life to this love, going, whatever, however I can serve you, I'm yours. And I really did. And that's all my work and my life has been about doing my best to be that love in myself, be that love as a father, and help others connect to that love. And now I help people bring that love into their businesses. But the reason I share that story is that what happened in that process of those last months that my wife Mirabai and I had was a thorough, utter, what I'd call a demasking. Yeah, that all the layers that were normally there between me and her, I actually found her quite annoying before she got sick. We annoyed each other a lot. We loved each other, but we also had, we grated on each other. We had different ways of things. We'd have conflict. We weren't anywhere close to some sort of like, I love you couple. We were frustrated. She was exhausted because now we know that she'd been exhausted because of the cancer for a long time. And so, yeah, we were loving, but a bit of a frustrated, grumpy couple. And all of that disappeared. And she was in incredible gratitude for every little thing that I was doing for her. And we were with each other. Yeah, I remember this moment when she'd had a flare up and actually had to go into hospital. And basically the notice had been that this meant she was near the end. The cancer had come back and spread, and any hope of healing or anything, because she'd gone into remission for a little while there, had sort of gone. And we'd had this big conversation about death and about really letting each other go, and yeah, her faith and trust in me that I would raise boy with I haven't thought about this bit of the story, but just, yeah, that she trusted me to raise him well. And I remember just sitting on that hospital bed with her, just looking into her eyes, and I can still remember that moment to this day. It's like one moment of human connection and devotion to each other in the face of such horror. And I remember walking out of the hospital, and she was actually standing at the window of the hospital, and I was like 10 stories down by a tree looking up at her and just breathing with her, and had this, yeah, just incredible love for her, and just how one moment of true connection is worth 1,000 functional moments. And when I was asking about what do I want to teach today, when Amrita said, I want you to teach something on human connection, it's this that came back to me, this time I had with her, and the what we experienced together. And then what I've done since is learn how to help us do that, access that space without needing such trauma, without needing such heartbreak, without needing such destruction to be able to get there. And so that's what we're going to explore today. That's what the secret is the secret of unmasking, the secret of taking off the layers that separate me from you through this Zoom screen, that the layers that separate you from your children, the layers that separate you from your beloved, and how we can take those layers off and find out who's there when we don't have the layers there. The basically simple way to understand the layers are thoughts, yeah, or beliefs, yeah, ideas, judgments about who another person is. And that when we do that, yeah, we're on a whole different exploration of human relationship, from human relationship as a functional relationship to human relationship as a excuse the language, but a fucking wild mystery. Yeah, because I'm sure, just in fact, let me ask the question, have you had a moment like I'm talking about? Yeah, just give us some hands if you've got a sense of that. Okay, beautiful. Yeah, that where it drops away. And so let's see if we can become better at that. Yeah, today's devoted to that one simple practice of dropping the masks and finding more connection. So how do we do that? Well, I'll be taking you through a practice in a minute to do that, a practice that you can use for with anyone in your life. In fact, you'll be choosing somebody to do the practice with. But before we get there, I want to share a couple of other stories just around the potency of this. So I remember another example of this demasking, this recognizing that I've got thoughts about another person and that's getting in the way. And this story often comes to me when I'm thinking about this sort of process of demasking. And I was running a course at the time, and the invitation was that we don't know the people in our life. We think we do because we've got a history with them. We've got a whole bunch of stored thoughts about them. We've got stored experiences. We've got a whole lot of ideas about who they are. They've got ideas about who we are. We've got a history, good or bad, right or wrong, love you, you annoy me, or a combination of all of them. But we have a history that's built up, and that's like an accumulation. You know, like if you you know, didn't throw your rubbish out, you would just accumulate a lot of stuff in your house. And so we have that in relationships. We have an accumulation of stories, beliefs, emotions stored in our body that when we think of a person, that's part of what comes up. We think we know who the person is. We think we know how they feel about us. We think we know what the connection is, what it isn't, all sorts of things. Doesn't mean they're right or wrong, but they're there. And they obscure true connection. Was what we were teaching, what I was exploring in that session, that the principle being that true connection is the absence of these beliefs and ideas. It's being naked with a person, not metaphorically, unless it's your partner. But don't take this session and say, yes, Arion told me to go and be naked, and your employees might find that really weird. But to drop the filters and the masks, the beliefs, the stories, and find out who's actually there. And the invitation in this session was that you don't know who's there. Yeah, that we think we do. But if we genuinely rock up without our filters, without our masks, we find often that it's who's in front of us is not who we thought was there. There's someone different, and they're not as fixed as we think they are. And so that the exercise was to choose someone in your life that you would like more connection with, and go and practice being with that person without the normal filters and see what happens. And so there's one guy in the program who said, I'm actually going to spend the weekend with my family. but I don't think this is going to work with them. He literally said these words. He said that I'm really into nature. He was as a permaculturalist and you know, was really passionate about the land and passionate about meditation and connection to nature and all sorts of things. And his family was fundamental Christian. And his belief was they didn't understand him. They thought he was just some weird sort of hippie dude. And in actual fact, he worked on major, you know, reforestation of the land and incredible work he was doing. But he had a version that he's because he wasn't a Christian and because he wasn't married and because he was living a different set of values, he really felt very ostracized from his family. But he was going to spend a weekend, I think it was someone's birthday, with them. And so he said, I'm going to practice this. But he was quite like, you know, this isn't, like, it might work for some people, but it's not going to work for my family. But I'll go there and I'll just see what happens. I'll try and not bring the filters and see what happens. He came back the next week, the program, tears pouring down his face. And he shared that, oh my God, the first thing he said, oh my God, my family loved me so much. And he shared about how when he dropped the story about all those stories I just spoke about, he found this incredible connection with his family. And then he found out that he was not sharing who he was with his family. And so he decided to share what he was passionate about and what he loved. And he said they loved it. And he actually took all of them out into the forest and led a tree meditation for his whole family. Yeah. And just the tears pouring down his face, he was saying, I literally have a different family now. And they weren't different. They didn't even teach them the practice. He was only doing it one way. It's even more powerful when you both do it. But simply by him dropping what he thought, who he thought was there was a completely different family there. And I followed him for a while afterwards. I don't know now, but I know in the time after that, he had a richer connection with them that was just there then, simply because all he did, yeah, no great, you know, great practices or breakthroughs. He simply saw the stories he had and just put them down and found out what was there. And what was there was incredible love, but also a real interest in what he was interested in. It wasn't just sort of tolerating him. They genuinely wanted a deeper connection to the land. Yeah, it was exquisite to see that. So that's the practice that we're exploring today, is how we can do that in our lives with the people that we love and the people that we serve. So how do we do it? Well, I want you to grab a pen and paper, because we're going to do a bit of a written exercise and then a bit of a guided journey to unmask. So if you haven't got a pen and paper, go and grab one. If you literally don't have one, if you're out on a boat and there's none there, then that's fine. Well, you can just imagine it. But if you do, bring it there. And so then you're going to choose somebody. Yeah, somebody that you would love more intimacy with, you would love more connection with. And like I said at the start of this is for anyone. This can be your customers. In fact, a huge amount of what I teach people in business these days is fall deliriously in love with your customers, which means unmask, get to know them, listen to them, feel them. And, you know, we all know that if you know your customers well, you'll have a bigger business. So this isn't just a sort of a tantric intimacy practice. This is a revolution in how you connect to people, and also an incredible healer of conflict, because, you know, all that garbage that we carry, that past history, it creates incredible conflict, incredible suffering, because it gets even weirder where, let's say, you know, your stories about men are that men are a bit of idiots, and then you meet a new man, then you're not only bringing your history with this new man, you're bringing your history with men and bringing that forward. Yeah. And that becomes another filter. And so then obviously it makes it harder to connect, because they do one thing and it's like, aha, I see it, you know. So these histories that we have are incredibly influencing how we connect and how we relate. And the invitation is nothing wrong with those. Shared history is beautiful, but it's learning to recognize when it's closing us in and getting in the way of authentic, real human connection. And that one of the great causes of conflict, maybe the only cause, I'm not sure, is the inability to see things from someone else's perspective. Yeah, so that we're looking through our own lens, our own goggles, we see things one way, and our interpretation through our lens is that person's actions, that, that thing that person didn't do, or that thing that person said, that means this thing to me. And so then we create a whole story because it's looking from one perspective. But as we can put down those stories, take off those masks, it allows us to be much more limber in our perception and go and see it from their perspective. Because often conflict is two people with a different perspective trying to prove that their perspective is the right one, whereas in actual fact, there are, multiple perspectives that can be true that don't necessarily fit together. As you know, if you've got different religions in the family, or different, opposing beliefs, different football supporting teams, that we can have different difference, and it doesn't have to create distance, but often it does, especially if there's a history of it and if there's emotional charge, because that's the other thing. These things aren't just like thoughts. In fact, what makes a thought potent is emotion. So in my work we call them locks, but I'll just call them beliefs today. But a belief is a thought that's been created, and then emotion's been charged to it. So for example, if I said to you something, let's say that you're really comfortable with your hair, you like your hair, and I said your hair is ugly, then there's no, if you don't have an emotional charge to that, then you're just like, that's weird, why are you making a comment on my hair? There's no personal charge, no personal reaction, there's just whatever. Whereas if, let's say that you don't like your hips, and I was to say you've got fat hips, which is obviously a triggering thing and I would never say it, but the point is there would be an emotional charge that would come with that. That would add a whole lot more charge and drama to that, which then creates distance in the connection, rather than being able to go, well, that person's weird, why do they think having an opinion about my hips is relevant? It creates a charge in us. So the more we can release the stories, the more we can not add charge to someone else's perspective. Even if we don't agree with it, we still don't have to bring charge and drama to it. Okay, so now I want you to choose somebody that you would love that deepening connection with, and maybe just chuck it in the chat box. My mum, my partner, one of my children, whatever. Just most of the writing you can do on your page, but just chuck that in the chat box. Okay. And employer, great. Where are we? Let me just bring up the chats. They've disappeared. Okay. Got it. Partner, good old partners. Yay. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to do a practice of demasking, and this is a practice that you can do with anybody, and it's basically a practice of two things, which is recognizing the masks that I'm putting on and putting them down, and then inquiring what's there when I don't feel the space with that. And that's the juicy part, but it requires the demasking to do it. So get a bit of paper, write their name at the top, and then I'm just going to ask you a series of questions, and as you answer, I want you to do the written answer, but I also want you to feel it. This exercise works by full-bodied participation, not just by sort of thinking it in your head. So as you're writing, I want you to feel what you're writing as well. Okay, so write the person's name, and then I just want you to write what you would love with that person. Deeper intimacy, deeper connection, trust, play, love, romance. Might be weird if it's your employer, but so just what you would love. And you don't need to know how to get it. If it might be your mother-in-law and you've been at each other for 30 years and you're sure there's no chance you're ever going to have deep connection with your mother-in-law. She's a Republican, you're a Democrat, she's a liberal, Labor, whatever it is, but it's not true. The connection can be there. And I worked in a cancer ward in my 20s, and was doing healing sessions for people, and I have the privilege of meeting these people from all walks of life, who most of them were terminal and facing. This was long before my wife got sick, and the intimacy that these people had opened into through being close to their death was beautiful. The honesty that they would share, the things they would share about their life, and the connections they were having at that moment because the masks had come down. Yeah. So let's get that without needing that trauma. So what would you love with that person? And just write it down and feel it. Yeah. Yeah. Write it down and feel it. And as you do that, you may notice, depending on how much challenge there is to the person as you write it, there's already like, oh yeah, but they won't, or it's them, or you'll notice your own emotional charge. That's fine. We'll get to that. But just notice by sharing that intention, whether it feels like quite naturally it opens up, or like with the guy with the Christian family, that he was quite sure. Yeah. When he literally went, before he went, he was really sure who his family was. So notice whether those sorts of thoughts come up about it's not possible, or they'd really have to change. Yeah, because this whole practice is about them not changing at all. It's about how much radical relationship, how much change a relationship can go through just by you changing your perspective. Okay, so you've got that person there. You've written what you would love with them. Now, take a breath. Just imagine they're in front of you. For this next part of the exercise, the more you can viscerally feel them, the better. So now what I want you to do is I just want you to write down all the thoughts you have about this person. And I'm not necessarily just saying the negative ones, because sometimes even the so-called positive ones are there's still a filter. Yeah, even things like, oh, I love them. Yeah, can become a cage. Yeah, I work with men a lot. I've run men's retreats, and often men will say, oh yeah, I love my wife. And it's such a, they've known it for years, they know it and they think it, but it's not a lived experience. Yeah, they're going through the motions of life. So any beliefs that we have can become a cage. So just write down, as this person, write down your beliefs about them. Just what comes up. What are your thoughts do you have about this person? Yeah, you don't have to share this with them. This is your own stuff. But just write down whatever thoughts are there. And there's normally the surface ones, and then just allow some deeper ones. I'll give you a few minutes to just let that pour out. What are the deeper thoughts you have about this person? And just as you're writing them, just keep writing. But as you're doing it, noticing how you feel when you think those thoughts. Yeah, how do they impact you? What do they do to your perceptions? Just being aware of that as you write them. Another couple of minutes. We want to find a couple of really juicy ones, like, oh my God, did I say that out loud? Yeah, so just let them pour out. Just see if you can find some deeper ones. Maybe even look at some of them and see, is there a deeper one underneath that? Another minute to go. Really noticing the collection, depending on how big a history you've got with this person. There could be a whole lot of them there. I'm not expecting to get them all out now, but let's get as many of them out as we can. And some of them you may notice are about this person, but there's a thought you have about other people, what we call a global belief. So like men are, or women are, or, children are, teenagers are. Yeah, the amount of things, I've got a teenager at the moment, the amount of stories I heard about the way teenagers are, it's horrific, because my teenager's not like that. And it's quite like, I almost feel guilty, like, oh my God, I don't have a teenager who can't talk. I don't have a teenager who grunts. There's all these, like, so many stories I've grown up with about teenagers. And yeah, I've had to shed them all, and I just don't have that experience with a teenager. So it's almost like part of me expected it, and we know if we expect things, we can create them. So, okay, then secondly, I want you to write down what roles you play with this person. Yeah, there might be the really obvious ones like of husband or wife or parent or, whatever it is, but also just look at other ones like, oh, I'm the pleaser, or I'm the provider, yeah, or I'm the chef, or I'm the cleaner. But just write out the roles, because in that time with Mirabai, what happened was that the roles that I took on, basically the role of carer, but also of husband and of father, I became so strong and I felt so trapped inside those roles that I suppressed my own human experience, my own heart, my own grief, because it was like, oh my God, I've just got to do these roles. And so it was like my soul dried up and I just became these roles. And it's a big part of what diminishes our connection and relationship as we stop being human mysteries experiencing life together and we become stuck inside roles. Yeah, and those roles have obligations and thoughts about them, and then and the other person, what roles do they play for you, what roles do you play for them? So just take a few minutes to write down the roles that you guys are in. Counselor, therapist. Yeah, and it's nothing wrong with these. It's not about saying these aren't relevant. It's just about recognizing, have they become a cage or not? So just writing them down and notice what you feel. And if you, as you're doing it, more thoughts or beliefs come up about that person, write them down as well. So I'll give you another minute. I'm going to start to get together a good collection of, material there with this person. And then just emotions as well. Just want you to write down what emotions are connected to that, because emotions make these beliefs strong. Yeah, the stronger the emotion, the more this belief is true. Yeah, we've all seen people, not ourselves, of course, in that righteous indignation. It's like, this is the way it is. I can't believe you did that. Yeah, and that makes a belief really strong. Yeah, I'm currently watching Married at First Sight, first time in my life. Crazy show. I never thought I'd watch it in my life, but a dear friend is on the show, Lucinda, who's shining beautifully, thank God. But I'm watching this madness of human drama that is like the emotional charge about everything. I'm going to have an opinion about your life, and then you're going to have an opinion about me having an opinion. And it's like, fuck, is this what's happening in human life? Hopefully it's not, but it's just a way of milking it. But that's what happens is when emotion fuels a belief, it gets way stronger and way more irrational and way more immovable. So just have a look at both the roles and the beliefs you've done. What are the core emotions that you're feeling there, and write them down. Yeah, because they potentially are the single biggest body of energy that's between you and your partner, or you and your employer or child. Because if these emotions have been felt in the past but haven't been released, you just carry them around like a Santa sack over your shoulder. But it's more like a Santa sack over your head. You can't even see them. Okay, so now you've got these beliefs, these roles, and these emotions. Hopefully, you're starting to see, oh wow, there's a fair bit there. Yeah, especially if you've chosen a relationship that's got some history, there'll be a fair bit there. Yeah, this is one of the reasons the romance period, we've all heard about the romance period, yeah, the honeymoon period, is because there's not a lot of history with that person. Yeah, so that means true connection can flow. Once you've been with someone for 10 years, 20 years, there's, a whole collection of history. It doesn't even mean that the history is bad. It just means there's a whole lot of history, and that can get in the way of true connection. So just give us some hands if you can feel sort of the weight of that. Yeah, you can feel the, yeah, great, that it's got a gravitas to it. So next question. Is all of this, looking at all of these beliefs, emotions, roles, how are these impacting how you see the person? Yeah, if the intention is to meet a person as a living mystery, that's the invitation here, is to be in the innocence of life and meet a person as a living mystery and find what, what magic is here to unfold between us now, boss, today. What magic is, like, that's the invitation that I'm bringing to today, is to live with the depth of innocence inside your human connection. So what else is there instead of that? Yeah, how does this impact, how do these thoughts, these roles, these emotions, how do they impact how you see this person, how you feel about this person, how you interact with this person? Yeah, so just write that down, and this is a really important part. You want to feel it. Yeah, because in my situation, my wife, I had been relating to her through the role of carer as my patient. Yeah, and there's no real intimacies. If I'm fixed in that role of carer, I can't be a human with her. I can't share my own vulnerability and fear. I can't, because I'm locked inside the carer. So basically, intimacy in those 6 months when I was being a super carer, there was very little real intimacy and connection because I was locked inside a role. Yeah. So just write down, what do you notice? Yeah. What do you notice about how does this impact those people? How does this impact my perception of this person? How does it impact my relationship with this person? And we're not necessarily saying about it's true or not. Some of the things may very well be true, but let's say your partner is not taking care of their health. That might be true. They may not be taking care of their health, but if you've got a whole thought and a whole emotional charge about that, that's in the way of true connection, and also in the way of ever being able to influence them for better. Yeah, because it's very hard when two fixed opinions are trying to influence each other. It's very hard. Whereas when you can come naked, there's a whole new possibility of connection, which means a whole new possibility of being able to serve them, being able to have true communication. Okay. So that's what's there. We've got a sense of what's there and the impact. And maybe just one more question is, if you keep that there for the next 10 years, yeah, if you don't let that go, if you keep those thoughts, those beliefs, those roles, that history, how's it going to impact the relationship? Just write a few words about that. How's that my future with this person going to be? And it still might be good. Yeah, not necessarily saying this is inherently bad. Having roles and beliefs of other people, it can be beautiful, especially beliefs that are really healthy. But we're exploring where they restrict the flow of intimacy, love, co-creation with that person, understanding everything. Oh. Okay, and feeling all that, just take a moment to feel all of that history, that hopefully, because what we've done here, again, I'm not going to go fully into this, but my passion is about making the unconscious conscious, about being able to consciously create our life in tune with our love, rather than let our past run our life for us. And the way we do that is that we let the unconscious, which is where our thoughts and beliefs and emotions live, and which is also the body, but I won't go fully into that today, but is to make the unconscious conscious, and then it's a label to turn to the flow of life again and not control us. Whereas when these beliefs, thoughts, roles are in the unconscious, they're just shaping our perceptions and therefore restricting our flow. So what we've done now by naming those things is we've brought them up from the unconscious, where they were just shaping how we think about someone, and now we can see them. Yeah, we can see how they're shaping our thoughts. We can see how they're influencing our perceptions. And therefore, the possibility of not being run by them emerges. When something, comes from the unconscious to the conscious, it is seen, brought to the light, if you will, and therefore new space can emerge. So now now that we've brought all that up into the conscious, we're gonna release it. So the question here is, and in fact, just close your eyes for this. I just want you to feel this first, then I'll get you to write. I want you to imagine if all of that you brought up, you just let it go. Yeah. If you were just able to, like this guy was with his family, like I was with my wife, if you were able to just let that go. I'm not even saying you have to or need to know how to do that straight away, but just let's try hypothetically. If you could release all of those beliefs, all of those emotions, all of those roles, and just bear witness to this person in front of you without any of that, what do you see? What do you see? Yeah, just bear witness before you even write it down. Just notice, who is this person when you're not filling up the space with your Santa sack of past stuff, and just breathe with them. Imagine they're in front of you. And for the sake of this exercise, you can imagine they've also dropped their list, because it's a secret, but they've got as big a list about you as you do about them. Yeah, which is also woven of truths and nonsense and past base, all sorts of stuff. But imagine now the both of you have just dropped that. They're standing in front of you. Who do you see? Who do you feel? Who's now in front of you? It's the same person, but it's not. Who is in front of you? And just breathe with that for a second. Feel that in your heart. Feel that in your eyes. Yeah, feel that in your soul, or whatever that is. Just feel that space. She did this exact practice with a woman who transformed her relationship with her 7-year-old son through this practice. She was a single mother. She was exhausted, and she began to see her kid as a failure, because his behavior meant she was a failure as a mother. And so she was projecting onto him that he was a proof of her failure. So effectively, she was seeing him as a failure, which broke her heart to see that she was seeing it that way. She didn't mean to. It was just the associations that she was bringing. And when she dropped it, oh, I remember her sharing. She said, I found a connection with my boy I'd never thought I'd have. Yeah, nothing changed. All she did was just see and drop it. So just drop it and see who's here now. How do I feel about this person? Yeah. How do they feel about me? Because it's quite annoying to rock up to a relationship and rather than being empty, someone's got a whole history. So it's hard to understand how much we're impacting another person, but we are. Subtle cues, these beliefs and stories really do shape how we see another person. So feel what it's like to have dropped it, what's there. And then just when you're ready, just write down what you see, what you feel, who this person is without all of that. And just breathe with that and feel that, right? How that would feel, and also what would be possible with this person if you just didn't pick that up again. What might be possible with this person? Yeah, this mum shared about the adventures that she had with her family. Obviously, this guy with his family was able to have a whole deeper connection and care. They actually came out. I remember they came and worked on one of his revegetation projects with him. Yeah, or some of his siblings did. What would be possible with this person now? And really feel that. Let it touch you. Yeah, let it break you, maybe even. Because we want this. Yeah, I guarantee we want this depth of connection with people in our life. Yeah, and this is, I'm talking more about like on an intimate level, like partner, family, kids, but it's exactly the same thing with a boss or with employees or whatever it is. It's like we've got these fixed roles, and if we drop them, there's a whole new field of potentiality with this person. If we become good at dropping them, we become good at reinvigorating relationships, about finding new pathways, new possibilities with these people. And just imagine you walking into that relationship now without those masks. How would that be different for them? Yeah, imagine they haven't changed now, but imagine you just move towards them without these beliefs, these masks. How would that be for them? Just feel them, what it would be like for them to experience you, not with a Santa sack of stuff over your head, but just here with them. Yeah, the amount of beauty, magic, connection, growth, co-creation that gets crushed in this world because we can't shed the past and find connection again. Even if there's real issues to hammer out, when we're stuck inside two belief systems, the possibility for resolution and reconciliation is way less than if we become empty and naked and willing to listen, as well as willing to share our true heart, not the drama and the roles. So one more minute of just feeling what truly would be possible with that person, and feel, do I want that? And if yes, then what's one action that you could take from this place? Yeah, anything I do, I always finish with a call to action, because I love that, no transformation is complete for me, or no new possibility is real until it has been turned into action. That's how we take an inner breakthrough and weave it as part of our new world. So with this person, what, from this place, if you want to, what action would I take to express this? Yeah, sometimes there's a letter to write, a letter of apology. Sometimes there's a let's go out dancing. Sometimes there's a really deep conversation to have, or a deep heart share, or a deep listening, whatever it is. What action could I take as an expression of this? Beautiful. So we're going to finish up in a minute, knowing, of course, you can practice that with as many people in your life. You can practice it as a written practice. You can just practice it as like just looking at them and then rubbing your face and then looking again. And it can be a real honesty practice of learning to notice and share about with someone in your life. What projections are you putting onto this person? What masks are you wearing? Yeah, and the more you can talk about that, the more you can then take them off. So I'll share one last story to finish. I had a woman in my clinic years ago, and we were doing this work, and there was a man that fancied her, and she liked him as a friend, but she wasn't sure if she wanted to be with him. She wasn't feeling the spark of attraction that she normally would. And so we began to explore what's going on here. And through the process of this sort of like, what are the beliefs, what are the stories, what she uncovered was that she basically was carrying these two other people that she'd been with, who had this incredible fire of like sexual chemistry with, and she was comparing him to them. And then we asked, how did the relationship with those other two people turn out? And it was like, oh, actually, they were both terrible. They both didn't turn into healthy relationships at all. And so it really, I literally remember her face going and breaking at that moment, and then going, oh, right, I'm projecting something from the past. What would actually be possible with him if I dropped that? And I remember just seeing her face melt, and she said, oh my God, the deepest love I've ever known. And it was like literally dropping these past stories. She was able to see a man she couldn't see, because she was going, oh, I'm not feeling a certain thing that was a past-based thing that hadn't worked. They then got married and had a baby, and she literally, they both say, the work they did to drop those masks is what allowed them to do that. Yeah. One more story just quickly, because it just reminds me of it. Another woman, been with her partner 15 years, 2 kids, and she came to me, and in a session she sort of whispered, I remembered that when she chose to be with him, she'd had the thought, maybe I'm settling here. Yeah, maybe I could do better than him. Maybe I'm settling. And she'd held that as a secret belief through 2 kids, through 15 years. And now she was thinking about leaving him because of that. Maybe she'd settled. Maybe she wasn't satisfied. Maybe she wasn't getting what she needed. And, oh, it's only going to make me cry, because so when she saw that, and she shared it with me like a confession, like it was true that she'd settled. And I said, well, maybe that's true. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's not true. Let's just see what happens when you drop that story. And I remember her going, oh my God, maybe it was never true. And she dropped it and just went like, and asked herself, not from a past-based story, but did I settle? Yeah. And what she found was, absolutely, I love this man. And I actually bumped into, I haven't seen them for 5, 6 years, bumped into them at a party recently. They both came up, tears in their face, going, what we learned from you transformed our whole relationship. Where, the beautiful story there. But these things aren't just momentary shifts. These things can transform, horrible futures into magnificent ones. So thank you. Beautiful to connect with you, those of you here live, those of you listening to the recording. If you want to connect with me, I do one-on-one work. I run group programs around awakening up your life force to connect to your love and bring it out into action. And I run business development programs for people in the wisdom industry who have messages they want to bring to the world. So coaches, therapists, facilitators, content creators who really want to bring their unique message to the world, and I have a whole system to help them design that business, get your first clients, right up to building a thriving practice with groups and one-on-one. So if any of them interest you, you can reach out to me. Okay, thank you very much. I'll call that finished, but I'm also just open to any feedback or anything anyone wants to share to complete. But that's official transmission complete. Thank you all.